comedy of A.J. McKenzie. Please welcome A.J. McKenzie.
Oh, thank you very much, everybody. I'm single, but I'm not even close to being in a relationship. And I know that because I recently got rejected by a girl with a mustache. And the worst part was I didn't even hit on her. She just came up to me and said, "I know what you're thinking, and you don't have a chance." And what was I supposed to say? Because what I was thinking was, I wish I could grow one like that. I'm not very good at flirting. I was having my headshot taken, and the photographer asked me to flirt with the camera, so I pushed it into the mud. I was with this girl at a Chinese food restaurant. We were kind of on a date, and she told me about this game that when you get the fortune cookie, you have to say "in bed" after whatever it says, because it's really funny. Have you heard about this game? So she got hers, and she read it, and it said, "You will be successful at whatever you try. In bed." And we laughed, and we touched, and it was great, right? And then I got mine, and I tried doing it, and mine said, "Important words of advice may come from a child. In bed?" Like, this game got awkward. Because that means not only do I sleep with 9-year-olds, but afterwards they have pointers for me. Is that like a real tattoo? That is a really awesome, that is so sexy. That is so awesome. No, it's not? It's not a real tattoo? Ah, fuck you then. And that's why I'm single. I was with this girl at Subway a little while ago, and I remember it because she was 5 inches through her 6-inch, and she turned to me and she was like, "Oh, I'm so full right now." And as soon as she said that, in my head, it was like all my brain cells turned to each other and were like, "Did you hear that? 5 inches fills her up." And they started high-fiving each other. Pop the champagne, we got a chance, you know? And she saw me smiling to myself, and she was like, "Oh, what's so funny?" And I was like, "Oh, you'll see." I got a new computer, and it's got this great function on it. It remembers all the websites you've been to. So when I typed in www.ho, it came down like Hotmail. Is that what you wanted? And that was so cool until I noticed all I had to do was type in www, and when it came down, it was full of porn sites. And how sad is that? Before you can type in the third W, a computer's like, "Let me guess, porn." Yeah, less attitude then. And then I noticed if I'm going to Hotmail and I type in www.h, it comes down full of porn sites that don't even start with H. It's like the computer doesn't even believe me, you know? It's like, "Really, H? I don't think so. Sure you don't want porn?" So even though that's such a convenient function, I had to get rid of it because my dad was coming to visit me. I couldn't run the risk he would see that, you know, because he doesn't understand technology, so he would just start freaking out and being like, "This thing's reading my mind." I was on my computer looking up to see if canola oil was the same thing as vegetable oil, because I'm an idiot. And they are, and they both come from the rapeseed, but they call it canola oil to avoid the negative connotation with the word rape. I thought, can you imagine if they actually called it rape oil? Like, totally different clientele. Commercials would be different. I got a virus on my computer, but all that happened was all these porn sites started popping up. I thought, I wish human viruses could be that much fun. You know? Like, you get the flu, you can't stop orgasming, you're like, "Oh my God. Oh, this is amazing. I can't wait till I get Ebola." Oh my God. I do watch porn on my computer, though, because you can just skip the beginning and go right to the good part, right? And I did that once, and it was in the middle of the action, and the girl just yelled out, "Yeah, spank my assassin's ass." And it was the first time I'd ever been watching a porn and had to go back to the beginning to see what the hell was going on. Assassin. So I was watching this thing and laughing hysterically, and I don't know if you know this, but it's like the weirdest feeling to be laughing while you're masturbating. Because those are like the two most opposite things your body was designed for. And I felt like the time I was eating on the toilet. I was like, I should have spread these out. You know, like 2 separate activities. And I started laughing sort of at this point. I was just doubled over laughing. And that's when I realized if anyone had walked in on me while I was like that, like they would have to have thought I was trying to go down on myself, couldn't make it, and found it hilarious. I've actually come up with an idea for a porn movie. It's a spoof on the Disney cartoon, Beauty and the Beast. It's not what you're thinking, I hope. In this version, the only way to break the spell is for someone to have sex with the Beast, right? And at first she doesn't want to, but then the candle sings a song about it, and she's like, well, it must be true, you know? So then they do it, and that's the movie, like 60 minutes of that. Except afterwards, they're lying in bed together, and he's still a beast, you know? And she's like, what? I thought you said that would break the spell. And then he just starts laughing at her like, I can't believe you fell for that. Oh, my God. Then he high-fives the candle. I like watching TV. My favorite show is probably CSI. I love it, but I can't even believe the stuff they can find now. The stuff they're gonna find 15 years from now will be mind-blowing. Criminals won't have a chance, you know? Like, 15 years from now, there's gonna be a guy in the police station. The cops are gonna be like, you thought you were pretty clever because you were wearing gloves, but let me ask you this. Was your shadow wearing gloves? I used to like to smoke pot, not so much anymore. And when I get high, my favorite thing to do was to watch sports bloopers. Anything from the Olympics, you know, because when I was normal, I couldn't laugh at that kind of thing because I felt bad for them because they wasted their entire life, you know. But when you're high and you see someone wasting their life, you're like, well, that's what they get for trying. I'm on the couch, I feel fine. You know? I do a lot of shows on the road, and what I do is to make sure no one breaks into my hotel. When I'm not there, I turn the TV up really loud so people think I'm still in it, right? Because no one's ever gonna crack that code. And one time, though, I stayed out really late, and when I came back, the channel I'd left it on had turned into one of those infomercials for, like, phone sex. I felt really bad for the people beside me, because the whole night they must have been thinking, like, just phone them already. Like, who is that cheap and horny? I do a lot of shows in small towns, and sometimes you don't know it's a small town until something weird happens. I was doing a show in one place, and I used my credit card there, and they canceled it. Because apparently Visa couldn't think of a reason for me to be in Thunder Bay, so they thought it was stolen. Because that's what criminals do. They take cards, go there, and spend $7 at Subway. You crack the code. And then I was like, how sad is that? A $7 purchase on my account gets red flagged. They're like, someone's living the high life on his dime. It's not the usual candy bar. I bought a pack of Werther's Original, which I hadn't had in like 5 years, but they're delicious, right? And when I got it, it said on the bag, warning, excessive consumption, and these become a laxative. And that wasn't there 5 years ago, which means they didn't know about it and it happened to someone. You know, like someone had 50 of them in an hour and was like, I don't feel so good. And then they exploded from the inside. And then they actually called them up and was like, you should really put something on the bag. You know, like, warning, there's a reason old people like these so much. So, pace yourself. I like old people, though. I don't want you to think I don't like old people. I love hanging out with my grandparents, mostly because they remind me of hanging out with my friends when we're high, you know? Because old people and people who are stoned both tell really long-winded stories that don't go anywhere. You know, and then halfway through, they both get confused by their own story. And I'm like, hey, I've been there. That's awesome. And I noticed it when I was talking with my grandpa, and I asked him, how was your day today? And this is what he said to me. He said, well, it was going pretty good. I was watching Jeopardy, and I started eating a peach. But the thing about peaches is I don't like the skin on them, so I cut off with a knife. I've been thinking of switching to nectarines, but they're too hard for my teeth. I'd have to get new dentures. And it was right around now, I could tell just by looking at him that he was like, why am I talking about peaches? Like, did he bring it up or did I? And it's never a good sign when someone's telling you a story and they look at you like, a little help here. And I don't know, I'm high too, so it's like, And at that point, he just has to go with it like peaches for half an hour, you know? Because when you're old, you can't admit you don't know what you're talking about, because then they put you in a home. That's one of my favorite jokes, and here's why. I told it once, and there was a group of 16-year-old girls in the crowd, right? Like 20, 16-year-olds. And it was great because you could tell what they'd done in life, but what they laughed at. So I told that joke, and none of them laughed because they'd never smoked pot. And then I told a joke about dating, and they all laughed. And then I told a joke about anal sex, and only one of them laughed. And I was like, all right, now I know which one to go out with. I'm Jewish, and sometimes people ask me dumb things about it. One person asked me if we celebrate Easter, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, we got 'em. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I'm one of those people. You know, because when I first read the Bible, you know, I honestly thought it was saying you should do drugs because the people in it were doing drugs. You know, like, I'll give you two examples. There's Noah. Here's a guy who builds a giant boat to save all the animals from a flood being sent by God. Now, that's not your standard marijuana-induced panic attack, right? I looked it up. It took him 120 years to build the boat. Now, come on, only someone on pot could work that slowly. And then the other one I'll give you is Mary. She's your classic alcoholic, right? Because she's like, I'm pregnant, but I don't remember having sex. I read in the Bible that Adam was bored, so God took out one of his ribs and made Eve from it. I thought that seems like a lot of wasted energy, you know? Because if he'd just taken out a few more ribs, he wouldn't have needed a woman. I was driving by a church, and you know how they have those like billboards out front with the inspirational sayings? And this one said, "You are God's #1 priority." And I thought, God's not very good at his job. You know, like, I live in a small apartment, I make no money. Like, I'm #1 and I got nothing. If you're #2, you're screwed. I heard that there was a group of Chinese exchange students that were in Vancouver and were trying to go back to China. But they wouldn't let them. They put them in a contamination thing because they had measles. I was like, you may as well send them back because it's about time we sent a disease to China, you know? It's like, hey, this is for SARS, bitches. Like, should be able to take care of measles. I was talking with this guy who's germophobic. If you were in the wild trying to survive, you would either not be germophobic or die. You know, like, how many people would finally hunt down and kill a wild boar, and then they're like, oh, it fell in the mud. You know, how many people would freeze to death because they don't want to start a fire because they're too homophobic to rub two sticks together, you know? So they're like... I heard about this, and I didn't believe it at first, but apparently this is true. In the 80s, scientists said that only gay people could get AIDS. Do you know that? Like, if you have AIDS, you're gay. I thought that must have ruined someone's life. You know, someone has to go home and tell their parents they have AIDS, and they're like, but I'm not gay. The only thing I can think of is I share needles with people, and the parents are like, uh-huh, sure you do, fruitcake. And he's like, no, you don't get it, I'm addicted to heroin. And they're like, heroin, so that's the young man's name. When do we meet him? I saw one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen a little while ago, and now we're gonna find out if you agree with me or not. I saw a guy walking down the street wearing a Crime Stoppers t-shirt. And the reason that's hilarious is because they don't sell these in stores, which means the only way to get one is if you rat on someone. And that's it, that's the joke. If you don't picture it and laugh, I can't help you. Like, you just have to imagine you've been in jail, you come home and the first thing you see is your neighbor mowing the grass in a Crime Stoppers t-shirt. You're going back to jail. I was reading in the paper, and the title of the article said, Canadians fattest in world according to survey, which is ridiculous because we all know the Americans are the fattest, right? So I read it, and at the bottom it said, oh, the US didn't even take part in the survey. And I was like, well, then why even have it? You know, like, that would be like having a survey of the greatest basketball players and not including the black ones. You know? It's like, congratulations, Larry Bird, I had no choice. It means nothing. I used to play video games. I don't play them anymore. The reason I stopped playing video games is because all you get for beating them is you go back to the beginning and play it again on a harder difficulty setting. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, that would really suck if that's what happens to us when we die. You know? Like, that's it. After all this, we hear a voice, and all it says is, congratulations for completing life, but this time, try being blind. The commercial said I would eat cream cheese on a cloud. Yeah, I don't like telling dark jokes because most people don't like them. The only time I'm telling a dark joke is when I don't want people to see it. Like I was being interviewed in the Richmond Review, which is my hometown paper, and I didn't want people to see it because then people would call me and stuff. So I gave them answers that they couldn't possibly put in the paper. So one of the questions they asked me was, what would you do if you had an invisible cloak and why? So I said I'd hang myself in someone's apartment. That way for the rest of time, anyone who was in the place would be like, where's that smell coming from? It's disgusting. And then they actually printed it. Like, I got the one editor who wanted to be fired, and he was like, perfect, I can use that. I don't like practical jokes, but I will say the best practical joke I ever did was in grade 11 sex ed class. And the teacher asked, if you have any questions, write it down on a piece of paper, and I'll be happy to answer it for you. And it was high school, so I didn't have any sex questions. So I wrote down, is it all right that my father sleeps with me? And I put another kid's name on the bottom. And when the teacher got it, she actually read it out loud. She was like, is it all right that my father sleeps with me? And Mike Taylor's name is on it. I was like, how awesome is that? A teacher who cares more about getting laughs than about a student's feelings. You don't see that anymore. It's good to be doing a show here in front of such a great crowd. But I do a lot of weird shows, too. The weirdest show I ever did, the guy who came on stage decided to play spin the bottle with the audience, the kissing game, right? So he came on stage, he blindfolded himself, he spanned the bottle, and it actually landed on me, you know? And everyone knew I was a comic. They got really into it. They were like, you gotta do it, right? So I was like, fine, you know? I strutted up there, I grabbed them, I tilted them back. And then I froze because I couldn't go through with it, but luckily out of instinct, I did what any guy would do to another guy while he's blindfolded, and I sacked them. Because I love seeing a guy get hit in the balls, you know, because 90% of the time it doesn't hurt right away. You know, they get hit, and they're like, oh, I'm fine, and they take 5 steps, and they're like, oh no, I'm going down. That hit. And if you've never seen it, it's like if you've ever seen a small child run into a wall. You know, they're like, what do I do with this? And I think it's the same delayed reaction because your balls have the same intelligence as a child. You know, they don't know what's been going on in life. They've just been hanging out in a hammock the whole time, you know. Then one day they get knocked out of the hammock and they're like, what the hell was that? And what do we do? And the other one's like, I don't know, but I'm not sticking around. I'm getting inside the stomach. I was riding my bike home from a show one day. I got this great idea for a joke. And whenever I'm thinking of jokes, I really need to concentrate on it, you know? So I got off the bike, I'm thinking of the joke. It's funny, so I'm laughing to myself. Then when I was done, I came back to reality, and I was like, my feet are soaking wet. I was standing in a puddle, so I backed out of it. I knocked into this guy, and he snapped at me. He was like, hey, watch where you're going next time. And then there was a sweet old lady off to the side who was like, hey, don't you yell at him. He's special. And then I realized what had just happened. For the last 5 minutes, she watched me stand in a puddle laughing. And then I realized it looked even worse than that because I was still wearing my bike helmet. I heard that speed bumps are one of the leading causes of global warming because you slow down and you speed up and it wastes a lot of gas, but most of them are in school zones. So what's the message there? Like, listen, if you slow down, you ruin the world for every one of those children. So speed up and only ruin it for one of them. It's like, all right, sorry, fat kids, it's a Darwin thing. Look out. And I tell that joke, and I don't care if people think it's mean, because I told it once and a girl snort laughed. And that is the greatest laugh you can have. And people who snort always feel ashamed, but it's like, no, it's amazing. Like, you have to understand, as a comic, when we hear snorting, that's the equivalent of you throwing your panties on stage. Like, oh, we love it. I was watching one of those call-in sex shows, And this guy called up and he said, anytime I'm having sex with my girlfriend, someone down there gets really swollen. I don't know what's going on. Is she sick? She laughed and she goes, that's the clitoris, and it means you're doing a really good job. I thought that illustrates perfectly how little men know about women, that even the ones who are good at it have no idea what they're talking about. You know, like she's having the time of her life, and he's like, you need to go to the hospital. That thing looks infected. I got really drunk this one time, and I passed out in my bed, and I'd slept on my arm funny. I'd slept on it like this, so I couldn't feel it. I could just see it, you know. So I just pretended like I was sleeping with someone, and I was like, hey, how's it going, baby? You know, like, give us a kiss, you know. But then I got bored of doing that, so I wanted to do something else with my hand. So I tried waking it up by massaging it, but when I let it go, it just collapsed and hit me right in the face. And I had a black eye, and so the next day, everyone was like, hey, man, how do you get the shiner? And I was like, well, technically, my girlfriend punched me in the face. She didn't want to put out, but she did. Guys have to masturbate. It's just one of those things, you know what I mean? Like, because if you go too long without masturbating, when it comes out, it's just disgusting, you know? Like, I went a week once, and when I did it, a jelly bean came out. And you're probably thinking, there's no way it was a jelly bean. It probably just looked like one, but no, it tasted like one, too. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, AJ McKenzie.